Some big news today on the Philadelphia Eagles front. This breaking just moments ago that Jalen Hurts returned to practice on Thursday at Lincoln Financial Field for the first time since suffering that shoulder injury against the Chicago Bears. And I don't think that he's going to play against the New Orleans Saints because he did miss Wednesday's practice. Gardner Minshew was a full participant, of course, because he's 100% healthy. That Wednesday practice really important because that's when the Eagles really implement their game plan. So I think this was a matter of Jalen Hurts returning to the practice field just to get some throws in, but the fact that he was partaking in practice is a really good sign moving forward because the Eagles are not going to win a Super Bowl without their MVP candidate. And there's a lot of unknowns right now on the Jalen Hurts injury front. This is the first time practicing, and this is what we do know, since that injury. He took part in drills, and he was actually throwing the football, which is a positive sign because that means that his shoulder is starting to feel a little bit better since that sprain in there. He missed Wednesday's game plan install, so that's why I don't think he's going to play against the Saints at the Link on Sunday with an opportunity to lock down that number one seed and win the NFC East in the process. There's a slight chance that he does play against the Saints because he was on the field, and Nick Sirianni said this week that, yeah, there's a chance that he could play because this guy does recover very quickly. But throwing is not the issue with this injury. Getting hit is the issue. Getting tackled to the ground and landing on that shoulder really is the big concern there. He can feel good going into this game, then it takes one hit for him to go down onto the turf, land on that shoulder, and we're back where we started after that Bears game where we're talking about Jalen Hurts and questions about his injury status moving forward. And I don't think that he would be practicing if there was a risk of re-injury here or re-aggravating what's going on inside that shoulder injury. So this is a good sign for the Eagles as we project forward. I think that they're going to get the number one seed by winning one of their final two games. They're going to win the NFC East. The magic number is 1. So if they do that, that affords Jalen Hurts yet another week to rest up, first round of the playoffs, come back to the Link divisional round to try to make a run at a Super Bowl with home field advantage going through South Philadelphia. And we know it's a very hostile environment for visiting teams to come into and get a win during the playoffs. And the Eagles can beat the Saints with Gardner Minshew. I thought that Minshew played pretty solid football against the Dallas Cowboys. The turnovers were not on him. The interceptions and, of course, the fumbles. But the Birds cannot go on a Super Bowl run without Hurts. Minshew is somewhat limited, and with Hurts at that quarterback spot, this offense is somewhat unlimited, as we've seen this year with the records that they've been able to break and all of the playmakers on that side of the ball and this offensive line, even without Lane Johnson being one of the best in the NFL. And the big question here, will the Eagles err on the side of caution, sit Hurts in hopes that Minshew can get the win against the Saints and then you get that first round bye, or are they so desperate right now and feeling the pressure of trying to avoid a late season collapse and losing their final 3 games where they want Jalen Hurts to play because he gives them the best opportunity to win because they're so desperate to get that number one seed. Not only for him, but also the injury status of Lane Johnson, who also needs another week to recover as well. Now, going into today, Jalen Hurts hadn't practiced, as we said, since following the injury against the Bears. And there were some concerning reports out there about what the Eagles were saying about the injury to number one. This coming from Dan Graziano, ESPN, on Tuesday. Despite what the Eagles were saying publicly last week, I don't believe there was ever any consideration given to Jalen Hurts playing against Dallas after his shoulder injury was revealed. And once again, I'd be surprised if he played this week. The Eagles' real decision could end up being whether to give Hurts some game action in Week 18 against the Giants so that he doesn't have 5 weeks off before the divisional round playoff game, assuming that they get that number one seed. And the impression I get from talking to people about this situation is that the Eagles believe they will have Hurts back before their first playoff game, but they still aren't sure about the extent to which the injury will affect him once he does return. Now, Graziano said that on Tuesday, and then a couple of days later on Thursday, Hurts was on the field. Now, was this some type of a gamemanship move by this organization to put Hurts on the practice field when there was open media availability so that the fan base and their concerns could be calmed down a little bit because they're like, oh, if Jalen Hurts is on the practice field, we're okay. No, I don't think that they would run him out there risking further injury to a guy who's an MVP candidate this year and one of the breakout stars here in the 2022 NFL season. So what do you think? Will and should Jalen Hurts play this week against New Orleans? Y for yes, N for no? Let us know down below in the comment section. A lot more to get to here on the show, but speaking of that game against New Orleans, a look at the odds, and they haven't shifted just yet, which is somewhat telling because Vegas doesn't know if Hurts is going to play or not. Because if he does play, I think that this line, -7, Eagles being touchdown favorites, could increase a little bit. So as of right now, the Birds are 7-point favorites with the over-under checking in at 42. If you do want to bet on this game, no better place to do it than our sportsbook partner, BetUS. All NFL season, they've been offering a 125% deposit bonus. If you head to chatsports.com/EaglesBet, promo code Eagles125, you put in $100, you get $125 back. That's $225 to game with during this NFL season. For Hurts, I had a good feeling that this injury wasn't all that severe because after he got hurt against Chicago, this is how he finished the game. He had that 68-yard dime downfield to A.J. Brown. And to uncork that pass, your shoulder has to be intact, right? There's no structural damage there to a massive degree. He was also pretty accurate. 7 of 10, 110 yards, and he also carried the football 4 times. So the Eagles calling running plays for him and him being confident in using his legs tells me that the shoulder was holding up. But when the shoulder injury did happen, we did see that he was slow to get off the grass. As for his numbers this year, this is why he's an MVP candidate. This is why the Eagles need him back. And this is why they don't want to wait 5 weeks and rest him all that time so they can avoid the worries of him being rusty in that divisional round. Because if that's the case, the Eagles could be one and done in the playoffs if their quarterback doesn't play for more than a month. That's why they want to get him on the field against the Saints or potentially against the Giants, albeit maybe a half. He's completed 67% of his passes this year, 22 passing touchdowns to 5 interceptions. He's thrown for nearly 3,500 yards. He's also rushed for 13 touchdowns, so that's 35 touchdowns total and 747 rushing yards. And he's an MVP candidate for a reason. When I talk about MVP conversations, you have to think about it in this manner, in this context. You take that player away from their team, and what are they? We got a glimpse of that against the Cowboys with Gardner Minshew, but you take Hurts away from this Eagles team, he's the identity of this football team. Running it, throwing it, and the Eagles are so hard to game plan against because of his dual threat nature and the diversity that he brings to the pass game as well as the run game. But again, going back to Gardner Minshew, this guy for a long time has proven that he can play in this league, and against the Cowboys, he was not the problem. Did he miss a couple of throws? Yes, he did. There were some layups that he probably would admit that he'd like to have back. But his 2 interceptions, not on him. It's on Quez Watkins. 24 of 40 against one of the best defenses in the NFL, quote unquote, because they've been bad the last 3-4 weeks. 355 yards, average yards per attempt of 8.8. And the Eagles, with a backup quarterback, still had an opportunity late despite turning the football over 4 times to win that game. And if you go back to that final play from Minshew after he got pressured and threw the ball up, if A.J. Brown knew where the ball was on that play, and it was hard for him to do that because Minshew kind of had to throw a mini Hail Mary, like it was a decent ball at the back of the end zone. He did have a slight opportunity to bring that one down, and that would have been epic, and it would have been another Cowboys choke job. It didn't happen, but hopefully the Cowboys can come back to Lincoln Financial Field for the divisional round, maybe the NFC Championship game, depending on how the standings shake out, and the Cowboys will choke in a big moment because that is what they're known to do. Before Cowboys rematch, Eagles have a big game on Sunday against the New Orleans Saints. Lincoln Financial Field, opportunity to get that number 1 seed, lock down the NFC East. There is still a lot to play for, and I think this Eagles team is very motivated by what happened in Dallas because they're somewhat embarrassed by coughing the football up. So who you got, the Birds or the Saints? Let us know down in the comment section. Make sure you subscribe. We always appreciate you for being a part of our shows.